Oh, awesome. Okay. Feel like I need a bigger screen to fit everything in here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another season of Sasa's Archeo Gaming Live. This
So
summer, we're
I'm not
featuring Sasa gamer Julie
hearing
Levy with
any
special guests
audio.
each week. They will be playing through the two Legend of Zelda games, Breath
Oh,
of the
okay.
Wild, and the newest game, Tears of the
Okay.
Kingdom.
I was just like, oh no, but we're good.
What is SASA?
Sorry about
SASA stands for Save Ancient Studies Alliance. It is their mission to reverse the current downward trend in the study of the ancient world by
that.
engaging the
Right.
public and bringing together students and scholars to share their passion for the study
Oh,
of the ancient world in order to inspire a vast new generation of
oh,
students. We do
like
this in
we're
many ways,
doing
like
a
these live streams, other live streams
Hylian
like book
version of the
clubs and
birds
master
or something.
classes. We have private reading groups going on over the summer, so
Because
RSVP at our
Hitchcock
events
is
page.
creepy
We
in
also
any
do research
universe.
on the downward trend, have a virtual conference in July, have an open access database that is searchable, and much more. Where to find SASA? You can search Save Ancient Studies Alliance. We mainly post on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and we have a TikTok account. Archeo gaming streams are only streamed on Twitch, but will be saved on YouTube later. Some protocol for the event: please be kind and respectful. Listen and ask thoughtful questions throughout the event. Please be patient with technology and those administering it. We try very hard to be organized, but inevitably there are some blips. These, again, live events are streamed on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and will be saved on those platforms. Archeo Gaming is only streamed on Twitch. And of course, there are spoiler alerts for these games. You can subscribe on Twitch. You can enjoy SASA's live events such as Archeo Gaming book clubs, reading groups. Please consider to support SASA with a recurring monthly donation. For as little as $3 a month, you can help us save ancient studies. You can also subscribe on Twitch for free through your Amazon account. And with that, thank you for joining us and have fun.
Okay, we are live. Hello,
Wonderful.
friends, and hello, Jordi. Welcome to the
I
Sasa Archeo Gaming Live.
can anyone see me? I've got the Twitch window up on my laptop here,
I
but
can hear you.
that's okay. Go good. It just seems to have frozen, so I
Oh dear.
wasn't sure what was
Well,
going on.
hopefully you can see the gameplay moving.
I can see it on Discord, just not on
Oh, hi,
Twitch.
Debbie.
So
Thank you for confirming that you can hear Jordi. So chat can hear you.
wonderful. So I'll just disregard Twitch for now and focus on the right half of my screen here. Hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Julie and Sasa. I've been as they say, a longtime fan, first time caller, or however the saying goes. And I'm really excited to do all this. Thanks.
So we have just left the Great Plateau. I will admit that off screen I have been doing a little bit of roaming around, getting some map filled in, stuff that we don't have time to do on the screen. But our quest is still to go to Kakariko Village and meet with the Elder Impa. those of you who are following along last week or who have played this series before will recognize the name Impa. She is a long-standing member of the Zelda cast.
Mhm.
So right now I'm just wandering around in the most dangerous part of this area, which is Central Hyrule, just outside the Great Plateau. The reason I'm wandering around here is because I wanted to go through some different types of ruins that are around and sort of talk about the idea of ruins in Zelda.
Sounds wonderful.
So, let's get over here to this nice little promontory. But yeah, feel free to talk about whatever strikes your fancy, Jordi. Um,
Of course, I mean, I've got a lot to say about ruins. I'm actually I've been working on a, unfortunately not Zelda related, paper about um, the reception of ruins in the 19th century. So I'd be happy to talk about that once
yeah,
we
the reception of
get.
ruins is really fascinating, and I guess in the 19th century we're talking like follies and stuff.
Yeah. Well. So long story short, I I took a a seminar on Hadrian's Villa last fall at Columbia, where I did my MA in classical studies, and since my background is as a Victorianist, I wanted to somehow bring together like my two main interests, which are classics and 19th century poetry. And there's this long poem by a guy named Nicholas Mitchell, which is like a guidebook of ruined civilizations called Ruins of Many Lands.
That sounds really cool. I
And
would like this
it is
book.
really cool. Yeah. So long story short, this guy wrote, so it's a poem and like an epic poem, and he published, I think, 7 editions of the thing in his lifetime. So for this Hadrian's Villa class, I was focusing on the section where Mitchell sort of takes us around Hadrian's Villa. Um, and yeah, I think it'd be really cool to see more of that like talked about, because I feel like, especially in like the 19th, in the world of like 19th century studies, you just sort of hear a lot about um, people's interaction with like classical literature, but you don't really read or hear a lot about their interaction with like the remains of these civilizations that were seen as like paramount to like a British and to the British Empire's eyes. So yeah, I'm currently working on that stuff.
That's very
Right.
cool. Um,
Thank-
yeah, ruins hold this really interesting place. I have also in my life worked on some poetry, some of which I think is probably worth resubmitting places. You know, I put it together as a chat book, and nobody wants a first-time chat book. So, um,
right.
but
You
now that
got
I'm
it.
no longer in grad school, I'm like, well, you know, some of those were actually. But I always sort of associate my poetry with this tagline that I came up with actually for my live journal back in the days when that was a
Ooh,
thing, which is the ruins of beautiful things.
ooh, I like it.
Because that's kind of it's a very me sort of attitude. Is like the ruins of beautiful things are sometimes more beautiful than the things themselves, and hold
Nice.
this sort of ghost that I always find very appealing.
Yeah.
And here we are with some DLC. I just want to point out that this is Majora's Mask that I've just found, which is a reference to something that was over 10,000 years ago in this timeline in the Zelda universe. So, like, passed down from ancient times, it says, because it's a reference to an
Right.
older game. David in chat says it's quite cool that this ruin here is consistent. Some games just display a ruin aesthetic but are not like architecturally logical, so kudos to the devs. And yeah, I do kind of want to talk about this because this ruin, it's only 100 years old, right? Like this was in use 100 years ago in game. Like it was destroyed the same time that Link was near mortally wounded. So, like, you still have things like properly planted gardens, things that survive, and a lot of the structure is maintained, and so this is all battle damage. Now, the name of this ruin, I don't know if... Okay, I don't have the map of the area, so it's not going to pull it up again. But the name of the area is the Kalomo Garrison Ruins. So this was an army garrison, so it makes total sense for it to be destroyed in war. And
Mhm.
when you look at the inside here, what you find is a couple of beds for the guard post, a ruined table with 2 chairs. So like we can actually get a story out of this, and that even more than just like the consistent aesthetic. I'm just really impressed that they thought that out. And
Right.
like here's their little guard tower, here's their watch post for the lands across the way outside of central Hyrule, is they're posted looking away from the castle because of course inside is supposed to be safe, which it was not.
Right.
So one thing that I find less than realistic about these ruins, though, is like this is all supposed to be battle damage, and it is really impossible to tell that it is battle damage rather than time. Like they don't make a distinction very much, I don't think.
Right. So I've just seen Lexi Henning. Hi, Lexi.
Hi, Lexi.
In the chat, who's asking, just curious why you'd game with Zelda rather than something like Shadow of the Colossus. Do I find the ruins of Zelda in Zelda a bit more compelling? To be perfectly honest, I have no idea what Shadow of the Colossus is. uh, Whereas I've been playing Zelda since, I guess, Ocarina of Time came out. So, so yes, I know Zelda, and I don't know that other game. So I mean, that's and then also, I responded to Julie's post on Twitter, I think,
Mm-hmm.
a while back about sort of joining this conversation, and this was in the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom coming out. Um,
Thought I was gonna stealth kill this guy. Oops.
so, oopsies. So I mean, I think part of it was just sort of like an accident, like a fortuitous accident. I know Zelda, and I don't know the other game.
Yeah.
But
As to why we here on Sasa are playing Breath of the Wild as opposed to Shadow of the Colossus, well, I see Alex is also here in chat. You might want to ask him, since he does our more regular Sasa streams. We do, of course, do these regularly throughout the year, on Fridays, although during most of the year it is earlier in the day.
Mhm.
So, I am only temporarily on on live streaming duties because I happen to love Zelda, happen to love Breath of the Wild, and they were looking for somebody to go through it. Alex, has Sasa done Shadow of the Colossus? I don't like. I've never played it, but I know a lot about it in a broad sense, and it seems like a great fit. We haven't done it because PS4 doesn't like OBS. Okay, that's fair enough. Um, so I was just going to head the other direction, having picked up a couple more weapons. Let's see. So, like, those are some 100-year-old ruins, and we're gonna see a lot of them throughout game. But, like, I just want to compare them to the stuff that we know is 10,000 years old. Like, look at these towers. Like, that's just wild.
Right.
Actually, I wonder if I can get... Where's a good way to get down there? If I can get down into Pharaon, I can show you some ruins that are in-game very
Right.
much just a matter of time. But let's look at the Temple of Time, because I get the sense that that plateau has been there and kind of unpopulated for much longer than Central
Right.
Hyrule. Grand
And
Chicken
one
Lord,
thing
which, great name by the way, says, don't build them like they used to. That they don't.
is true. One thing I wanted to say about, for lack of a better word, like, I mean, so I was gonna say fictional ruins because, of course, unfortunately, Hyrule is not a real place. Or maybe fortunately, I don't know if I'd be okay with like those bokoblins like running around and trying to hit me with a stick. But this idea of like romanticized ruin is something that I would sort of love to get everyone's opinion on, because maybe it's because I was rereading that like paper on the like guidebook to ruins that I wrote a couple semesters ago. But I get that feeling that in the Zelda, like the newer Zelda games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which I recently started playing, we see like so like Link is sort of like taken out of time and then made to interact with a world that was there before him and will probably be there after him, but he's sort of like timeless in a way, right? Because the main story keeps repeating itself like every game. So I don't know. I just sort of wanted to. I don't really have anything to say right now, but I would love to see what y'all think in the chat. Like the Temple of Time here, as Julie is showing us, looks like a more high definition version of the Temple of Time in Ocarina of Time, and so like the developers are calling back to that game, assuming that some of us maybe even played it when it came out. Um, but at the same time, like it's its own building here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it also looks very similar to the architecture that you see in Skyward Sword, like up,
Yeah,
which is the furthest back in the timeline.
right.
So like you have this consistency of imagery throughout the
Yeah.
Zelda
And
series that spans, I don't know, at least dozens of thousands of years. I don't quite know. Yeah, it looks like some
right,
ruined
yeah.
castles and abbeys in Scotland and Ireland. I think that's intentional, right? Like they're very much going for that Western feel. And if you want to look back at last week's stream, it's very like we talked a lot about how the characters and the clothing are meant to primarily feel Western, with a few exceptions. Like the Sheikah stuff is not, but
Right, right.
um, but then you also, like, this building, how long was it in use? Was it in use when it was attacked? Because, I mean, it clearly was attacked in the recent, 100 years ago rather than much longer,
Right.
uprising of the Guardians, and a lot of them died here. So what, was this a sacred place that people came to, or what? We don't really have a sense, but the architecture actually looks very similar to what we were seeing down on the plateau. We've got the same
Hmm.
gray brick stonework with you know, we do have cleaner lines on the brick paving, but like otherwise it's very similar actually. So I'm not sure about my earlier thesis that maybe things here are older. Maybe they're not. Maybe just like the style is older.
Hmm. And our overlord here, Grand Chicken Lord, is saying that like um emotionally, like it would be pretty intense to walk across, like be resuscitated in time and like walk across a ruined landscape. I don't know how many of you have read The Last Man. It's Mary Shelley's second novel, which she wrote after Frankenstein.
Oh,
Um,
is that the one with the
and
resurrected Roman? No, there's
no,
there's like one with
no,
like a ghost of a Roman, but I think it was a short story.
right. I think that's a short story. The Last Man is so it's like this sci-fi novel that came out, I think, in like the 1830s or something like that. Um, and it's set in 2100, which I guess in the 1820s felt like, you know, really far in the future. Um,
I mean, that's
and it's
300
about like
years. That is
right.
forever, right?
It is. And long story short, the reason I sort of wanted to bring it up is that there's like a just like in Frankenstein, there's like a frame narrative around it, and the frame narrative is that this unnamed person and her partner are chilling in Italy, and they end up in the cave of the Sibyl at Cumae. Um,
The gates
Mary
of the
Shelley indeed
underworld.
is the goat. They end up in this like in the Sibyl's cave at Cumae, and the narrator goes like, "Holy crap!" Pardon my French here. She goes, "It's insane that Virgil described it just the way, just the way it is." And they find all these like snippets of prophecies a million in a million like different languages, and
I feel
they
you, Lexi, but he had the one poem.
he did have the one poem. And also Percy, I love him, don't get me wrong, but he was a little bit problematic, just like everyone is probably
Is.
is yes. But
Shiny.
like the snippets of like a million languages that they find in this cave, right, are the memoirs of like the last man on Earth, who's like an Englishman who's like based on Percy Shelley, actually. And like he's moping about being the last man on Earth, but like there's like a really interesting play with like time and continuity and stuff like that. And the descriptions of like ruined London feel very Breath of the Wild, to be honest. Although now we're scaling up some hill. I think I don't really know where we are now, but
Well, I just wanted to show off the Colosseum because
oh
they have a
yeah,
Colosseum.
they do,
Check
they
this
do.
place out. I'm not gonna go and fight a Lionel with only 5 hearts, but
Oh god, please don't. Not with
but
that armor you're wearing.
yeah, Heck no.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have the guard armor, but I am not up to
Mm.
fighting all of these folks at this stage. But mostly I
Right.
just wanted to show off the place. Like, it's so interesting to me that there is a Colosseum in this game.
Right.
Like,
Oh, I love that idea. Grand Chicken Lord. Do you mean the comparison like within Zelda, like how Link is
so
what,
like
like post Bronze Age collapse? Like
so I'm
this
I'm a very Bronze Age collapse sort of person, and like
Mhm.
1177 is my jam. I have videos on my YouTube channel that are about Wrath Goddess Sing, which is like set during the Bronze Age collapse, and I love it so much, and it's
Mhm.
wild, absolutely wild. So yeah,
Yeah.
so like the idea that, oh, is it lightning? I wonder if I actually have any metal on me. I don't. Good job,
You'll
me.
yeah.
Um, So yes, if you're wearing metal at this point in the game, you will in fact get zapped. Oh, my YouTube is Zilla's Athenaeum, and you can also find my Twitch channel where I, outside June and July of this summer, usually do my own Archeo gaming streams. So yeah, you can follow me. Follow me there. My Mastodon's also down there is Brododactylos. I think I'm on historians.social. And I'm also Zillable,
Mhm.
just like the Twitch link, on wandering.shop. So you can follow me just about anywhere. Um, but yeah, so like the Bronze Age collapse, we have these vast interconnected civilizations all over the Mediterranean and out through the Persian Empire and into India.
Mhm.
And I mean, Persia is an anachronism there, but
But yeah.
I'm glossing over it very quickly. Um, the lightning just struck one of the metal implements that one of those monsters down there is holding. That's pretty cool. I guess I'm close enough for that. Um, oh, Link, what are you doing with your foot? I love doing weird shit in this game. um, but, but yeah, so like, there's definitely, like, the Bronze Age collapse is kind of one of those very intriguing moments in classical studies and related ancient history where we're like, okay, everybody's interconnected trade network is suddenly getting hit with like a drought in the
Right.
east and these pirates in the west that are probably islanders who have been dealing with other climate related catastrophes, and like so like everything starts to fray around the edges and a lot of cities collapse, a couple of civilizations
Mhm.
just kind of, like, some cities are just razed to the ground, others are completely rebuilt in a different style, there seem to be political
Mhm.
revolutions everywhere. And so I think it's potentially even bigger than Zelda, where you do have these five interconnected civilizations, right? You have
Right.
Hyrule for the Hylians, and then the Zora and the Gerudo and the Rito and
Mhm. And
Gorons. That's their name. I lost it for a
yeah.
second. I like rocks. Um, but like Hyrule is just devastated, and 100 years later are only scattered civilizations. Oh, thanks, David. That's the link to my YouTube channel is now in chat. Um, and the rest still seem to be doing okay. Like they're not as torn apart as you see in that. But ruins wise, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm so within classics. My thing is late antiquity, so it's very very post Bronze Age collapse. But I would say that here within the sort of like in-game world, we we still so like we still have like if not living memory, right, of the pre-collapse. There seem to be a lot more records of the people who went who were there before, right? Um,
Yeah, and there is actually living memory, if not among Hylians, at least among the Sheikah and the Zora.
among the Sheikah, right? Um, yeah, I forgot. I haven't played Breath of the Wild in so long that I couldn't quite remember. But yeah, like, there doesn't seem to be like a complete civil collapse of like civilization. Just sort of like a big shock, right?
Yeah, it's
To civilization.
almost like a well, it is like a deity just came and just made a big punch to the heart of the land. And everything
Right,
around is still kind of going, wait, what?
right, and there's these. I mean, just like the shrine we're just coming up on, right? There's there are. I mean, I'm gonna call it a temple. It might
Yeah,
be
there's
an
shrines.
actual, but this like there's like shrines of the Sheikah because like we just saw that the eye light up.
Hmm.
So there's a lot more continuity, I think, here than there would be if. Although I gotta say, I would love to sort of see like a Breath of the Wild Bronze Age Collapse edition. That would be really fun.
Ooh,
I don't really know how that would work.
that would be very funny.
Maybe you're like I know Homer wasn't a real person, but maybe you're like some bard wandering around trying to get the story straight about
Mm.
the Trojans. Um, and you have to like figure out who remembers what Menelaus said or whatever. I don't know. Um, still, still an idea in the stages of. Ooh, Lexi, of course you chime in with the sort of the modern political hard hitting questions. Um, yes, I think so. I think it definitely adds to the mysticism of the ancient world. Um, and I mean, while I understand what you mean about the colonialist attitudes, I'm thinking here of like, for example, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I know we've had long conversations about that game. But like here in like within the world of Zelda, I don't think maybe I'm wrong. I would love to know what you think, but like I feel like we don't really see colonialism so much at play within like the world of Zelda. However, I do think that we need to be careful about romanticizing the past, and about or if we do romanticize the past, that we should be like in a game. I mean, that we should be steadfast in making sure people know that that this is fiction. It's historical fiction, but that it's not um, what quote unquote what actually happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's something to that really. Romanticizing, as we've already established, that both you and I do find something beautiful in the nature of ruins, just in general. Like, I do think that there's something to be cautious with. Like, if you want to compare this to the Bronze Age collapse, then I think the real comparison is that the people here are like the people in, like, 700 BCE, where they're looking back at these old ruins and saying,
Right.
that's impossible for humans to do. A Cyclops must have built it. It must have been
Yeah.
something like our ancestors were so badass to have done that it couldn't actually have been them. But
So it's
the colonial aspect comes in when we're looking at ruins of other cultures. And so I think that there's definitely something to that, and in particular, if we're like, I wish I could just teleport down to Faerun right now so we could look at the Zonai ruins, because I think this is exactly what I thought the first time I saw them. Is these ruins, you know, these have the very Japanese Jomon antiquity style, and then the ruins of Hyrule 100 years ago have this very Western style, like very, very like medieval church style.
Yep.
But the ruins that they call Zonai, and I know that Tears of the Kingdom goes into this much more, just from what little I've seen, so I have no
Right.
idea what the actual history in game is, but just from a purely aesthetic point of view, they look to me like Central American ruins. They look very Maya. They have these dragon
Yeah.
heads and these like big faces that feels very edging on colonialist to me, because when you're doing it for yourself, like Japan, fine. When you're doing it to major powers, like, you know,
Yeah, that's
medieval
okay.
Christianity, like, that's one thing. But
Right.
to take something from another culture is another thing entirely. And that is, you know, it's difficult, right? Like,
Right.
it's difficult to say that you're doing it right. You know, that you're doing it respectfully.
Yeah, I guess what I meant about the colonialism angle was that, like, within the I hadn't thought about, like, sort of the mixing of different architectural styles. But I meant, like, within the game, Link is a Hylian who has awoken 100 years later, and they are exploring ostensibly their own land, right? So I don't see that through a colonialist lens. The poem I mentioned earlier that I'm writing about, that on the other hand, that is like super duper colonialist.
Uh-huh.
We can talk about that later. I feel like I could spend an hour, like, both very excitedly blathering on about this poem and being like, this is the most Victorian thing ever, because it's um like, really, like, it goes in really hardcore, like, oh my god, like, ruins are awesome, but then the narrator freaks out, and they're like, oh crap, just as how, like, right, like, just as how, like, the Parthenon is now in shambles, um that means, like, London could be in shambles at some point, and, like, that should never happen.
Right.
um but like within the like world of Zelda, I guess, is what I meant. Like, I
Yeah.
don't see this as, like, colonialist. We could, of course, talk about the ways in which different cultures within Zelda take from real world identifiable cultures, and there I could totally see colonialism happening.
Yeah. Um it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting and a very big topic. There's so much to talk about. Okay, I know that I need
Right.
this. Come on. I wonder if this will work. I actually don't remember how you're supposed to do this. There's always like 3 different ways to do everything, so it's fine.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Wait. Oh, Lexi, I just saw your comment there about games leading treasure hunters to like remote historical sites. Um, that is all at once kind of weirdly interesting but terrifying all at once. Um, do you know of any like off the top of your head that like I'm thinking like Assassin's Creed, maybe Assassin's Creed Odyssey being like, "Oh my god, come to like Mycenae and grab a piece of the treasury of Atreus or something." I don't know. But that's kind of scary. I mean, people are gonna do dumb things,
People,
unfortunately.
yeah. But there is something to that as well, right? Like the idea of treasure hunting, the idea of ruins being a part of an ancient mystical truth. Like
Right.
there is a lot of crap out there about Atlantis, you know,
Right.
and this idea. I think I talked to about this with my guest last week of the like the ancient high-tech civilization with arts we have lost is actually a pretty scary thing when it gets applied to the real world, and it's often used for like
Right.
very weird fashy culty things.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
but it is at the same time charming, and it's kind of one of those things of like, how do we talk about that while still like, is this an outdated game element? Should we be paying attention to stuff like that when we build games?
Right.
So just
Um.
to show people what modern Hylian civilization is like.
Yeah.
Well, here's a stable. So a lot of people get around by horse. There are a couple of towns. We're gonna hit Kakariko after I do this, but I just wanted to show you the stables because I think they're cool. Like, these are just established in every region that Hylians travel to. And like, they have an inn and a horse area, and it's just kind of a standard thing. Also dogs. Hi, dog.
Yeah.
I will stare at you until you love me.
Oh, Lexi, thanks for clearing that up. That's yeah. I mean, I trust you when it comes to sort of the real world applications of all this stuff. Because I am maybe I'm not gonna say fortunate, but I've been so far privileged enough to just be like, oh, I'm gonna do classics with people who are doing classics and who generally think, um, generally think in the same ways I do. So like nobody I know personally is going out there trying to, bring back a chunk of some archaeological site. But I could totally see like the how the inclusion of hard to find sites in games would be very um would be questionable because you're at once leading people to them, right? But couldn't you on the other hand say that you're bringing them to people's attention so that they maybe might be be interested in preserving them and be interested in if you don't know that something exists, it's really hard to care about it. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm being too much of an idealist, and being like, oh, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there are pros and cons to things like that, and part of it is definitely context, right? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
if in the context other people treat the ruins as sacred, then that's not as big a deal as in, say, this game where you will find treasure hunters trying to break into shrines.
Yeah. And
So,
I mean, in the game, like you're the one looting
mm-hmm, yep,
and killing a bunch of people, or well, goblins, etc., right?
yep.
And taking their weapons and cooking in their kitchens and such. Um.
Although to be fair, at least it's very clear here that they aren't people. They're
Oh, well, I mean, yeah,
like
yeah,
that's
there.
the like the Boko camps. Like all of the
But
monsters are explicitly non-human and explicitly respawn. Like
true,
they can't be permanently killed.
right.
So
I mean,
there's that. But
I'm just being like hard headed, I guess. But it would be interesting to do like as a thought experiment, right? Like, what if you were like not like a Boko archaeologist or something, right? But like, what if you happen to be one of those quote unquote monsters, and you were like, "Oh no, I have to go find the Triforce." I mean, it's we don't really explicitly find the Triforce in this game, right? But like, they wear clothing, they presumably speak, they have they cook with fire, right? Like, what does it mean to be non-human?
it's true.
I'm just
No,
being.
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the one of the things that's rather interesting is can I hold these two thoughts in my head at the same time? Is oh yes, there are games, and in fact, it's games that I very much, on the whole, not solely, obviously, but in general, I tend to prefer games where it's not about combat and looting. Oops, didn't mean to knock you down. That's just incidental.
Mhm.
Um, but for instance, what got me into Archeo gaming, thank you, David, so I learned about this game, The Forgotten City, where you can be an archaeologist, as I decided to be in the game, and you're just thrown into an ancient Roman city. There is almost no combat. If you do combat, the game punishes you. If you steal things, the game punishes you. Like it's very explicitly not that. Um,
I'll have to check it out.
and so like I guess I should plug my channel again. If you want to see me play all the way through that game with my commentary, you can see it all on my YouTube channel. Um, it was the very first in my Archeo gaming series. Wow. Guess I'm gonna have to sell some stuff.
Was speaking of games set in the ancient world where you don't, I mean, saying where you don't necessarily have to fight. I do want to bring up my introduction to Archeo gaming before I knew it was a thing. Was my teacher of mine in high school. I'm gonna plug him because he's amazing. Dr. Jeremiah McCall.
Oh, we love Jeremiah around here.
Yes.
I
Um,
did try to see if I could get him on the stream, but he didn't have time. So
yeah, he's busy, but I'm sure you'll get us both on the stream at some point. But he used to do when I was like in middle school or high school. I don't quite remember. He used to teach us about the Romans um, by like playing bits and pieces of Rome Total War. And he like, sure, yeah, we did talk about like Roman military formations and the reforms of that guy. What's his name? Gaius Marius, and all that stuff. But we also focused on like the intercity commerce kind of um aspect of the game, right? The all the bits that aren't being out on the battlefield and fighting. Um and so like I remember once, he was like, "Oh, we could like if we wanted to bring this part of the Mediterranean under our control, we could, right? Like we could come up to them and besiege them or like fight them out on the field or whatever, or we could be super nice to them and like engage in like strike up a working relationship and like become like trading partners or something like that." So um I when I played through like Total War, Rome Total War, like I think I did fight every so often, but I much more preferred like having lots of like whatever the game calls them, like emissaries or like ambassadors or whatever, and like exerting influence that way. It also helped that I turned on cheats, so I had like infinite denarii, right? So I could just bribe people and be like, "Come hang out with us." Yeah. Ooh, David, that game sounds amazing. I have not played that game.
I'm very excited to hear about another of these games. Because, like I said, David was the one who turned me on to the Forgotten City in the first place and got me into this. Not that I
Nice.
didn't already love Sassa, but
Right.
I'm gonna have to look that up. And Grand Chicken Lord, I did want to say, like, very much that
Yep.
violence is just such an ingrained part of how video game culture is. I'm a big proponent of changing that wherever possible.
Right. I mean,
So
I think
while I love this game, I love it for its exploration. I love it for its puzzles. The combat it exists, like it's okay. I know a lot of people do love it for its combat though, so like I don't want to completely knock it.
yeah, no, I mean, I think it's well done though because it's like not like yeah, I mean, I love Assassin's Creed for lots of reasons, but like I feel like that game is more focused on you like sneaking up and killing people, and yeah, sure, you explore and stuff, but like the whole like you're an assassin because that's part of the
Yeah.
part of the thing.
For those of you who are
Whereas-
regular watchers of the Sasa Archeo Gaming live streams, Kate is the one who is like, yeah, let's go kill things! Which is great fun to watch, but is just very not me.
Right. No, and I mean, Lexi, who's been very vocal in the chat and who's a wonderful human being, was
Go
the
check
one
out the
who,
Ozymandias podcast. Just do it.
yes, also the chair. I'm sorry, too academic here. Uh, the chair of the Ozymandias podcast, and yeah, the brains behind the wonderful thing that is um ancient office hours and such. But like I got into Assassin's Creed Odyssey because Lexi was like, "Oh my god, why haven't you played this?" And I was like, "I don't really like killing things in games." And then I started playing Assassin's Creed, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so much fun." I understand that there's just because you do something in a game doesn't mean um you would do it, or like that you endorse it. It's a little problematic, I guess.
Right,
Right?
like, doing stuff in a game does
But,
not translate to you approving of that thing in real life at all. We have lots and
no,
lots of studies on that, because of the satanic panic stuff.
right. And like, would I ever go hang gliding even though I love Zelda? Hell no. Right? Just in the same way that I wouldn't decide to run up and like start, assassinating people in Delphi or wherever. Cassandra. Because I do play as Cassandra. Yes,
Wait,
Lexi,
you
we
mean
can
there are
love the
other
game, but
options?
not
I've never
lose.
heard of them.
Yes, you can, right? Like, there's also some dude whose name I don't know. But
Some dude.
yeah, some dude. Um, but yes, Lexi's right. We can love the game, but not loot sites ourselves. Oh shit, that little piggy almost threw a rock at you. Um,
Ding, ding, ding. Oh yeah, Debbie, that's a really interesting point. The sort of the transition from having just one mainstay of type of video game to a
right,
wider avenue of play. It is in some ways like the transition to talkies as it was, because
right.
for so long there were just only so many things you could do with the
Mhm.
technology that we had, and only so many people interested in making them or playing them for that matter. Um,
Right.
Whereas now it's anybody can get into it and anybody can make whatever they
Mm.
want. And so there is a huge amount of gaming that has nothing to do with fighting or killing. And some people on the internet do like to
Mm.
say that those aren't games, but they are.
Right. Not to plug the wonderful human being that is Jeremiah McCall again, but when I was in one of his classes, because he was like he still is a wonderful high school teacher.
Mhm.
I like convinced him that it was like a game design elective or something like that.
That's so cool.
And like some people were making board games, some people were making things. And at that time, I was like a baby Victorianist, even at that age, and I wanted to make a game that was like a text based role playing game where you were Lewis Carroll
Shalash.
and you like had to go. It was like based on his life, but you could, make different choices and stuff. And the game went nowhere. But I was like, what happens if this like person from like what had because he was a mathematics professor at Oxford. Like that was his big thing. Um, I was like, what happens if he's just like, oh no, I'm just really into math, and like writing just takes away writing fiction just takes away from algebra because yay algebra, says
I cannot
Charles
imagine
Edson,
that.
right? And like, I mean, it wasn't really I think the reason it didn't turn out was I had a semester to work on this thing, and also I was like applying to college, um, and it wasn't really like it was as um fun as a thought experiment, but like it was a game that didn't work out, but it was a game that had no, you couldn't be like, haha, I'm Charles Dodson and I'm gonna go wreck some shit. Like, that,
Yeah,
that that
yeah.
wasn't an option. It was like, am I gonna do math or am I gonna do poetry and Alice in Wonderland, etc. Um, which like would have made for a bad game, but it was like a fun way to learn about, while we were watching Dr. McCall play Rome Total War.
Yeah, and I
And
mean,
thinking
when it
of
comes to
those
board
things.
games, because that's actually where Jeremiah and I first connected, is talking about board game reception. Um, I also make videos about board games as media on my
Mm,
channel that I will plug again, Zilla's Athenaeum. Um, but like the big bump in breaking out of competitive gaming and getting into cooperative or isometric play
Right.
is like that's kind of the thing that made board games big again, starting in the in the aughts.
Right.
And while there are definitely people who don't enjoy cooperative games so much, there are just a lot of very cool games that don't really involve you sniping at other people at all. And that's
And then
like when you compare that to like, you grow up playing what there's like chess, checkers, and
right.
Monopoly in most people's houses, right? Or maybe Risk.
Right. Hmm.
And like that's a big paradigm shift, right? To start having games where you're building a stained glass window, or
Right.
you're trying to escape a deadly desert before you all pass away from thirst. And those are both games that we have in my house right now. You know, like
Right. No, and
so I think video games is having the has started to have the same shift, but not the AAA publishers, which is a shame.
right. And I think like more and more I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but like these days
You're younger than me.
um people like people recognize that there's art in game design, whereas
Yes.
I feel like maybe before it was just like, oh, you're like really into this game because like you don't want to do your homework or something along those lines. Whereas like now we recognize them as art, and
Yeah,
there's like
the
a
the
whole
video games are art question was like if you were online in the gamer adjacent scene anytime in the last 20 years, this is just a huge deal. Like everybody arguing
yeah,
about whether or not games can be art, whether or not games include art, whether or not art games are games, like every possible
right,
aspect of that. But it's the same argument that we had when, as we were talking about earlier, when cinema became cinema, right?
right. Like, oh, like now they don't have to act so much because they can talk and tell us what they're thinking, and you don't need intertitles or whatever those are called. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And
And
I just wanna, oh,
yeah, go for it.
sorry.
Go for it.
No, I was just gonna say that not too long ago, my girlfriend and I played through the Untitled Goose Game.
Oh, I
Um,
love it.
and when she was like, oh, she was describing it to me, and she said, "Oh, you're like a goose who who wreaks havoc." Right?
Uh-huh.
And this is going back to our chat about earlier about like how some games are focused on like violence and some are not. I feel like the Untitled Goose Game is a perfect example of how the same game could be
Could be
seen,
either.
like both ways, right? Because you are a goose who's like positively wrecking some human's life, or at least his day. Um, but it's like so ridiculous that it
It's
doesn't
cartoony.
feel like right. It's cartoony. It doesn't feel violent. You're just like, how crazy, like how wild can I get? Also, I'm a goose, and like, I don't know. There's like just something so philosophical um about that kind of mindset that I think should be exported to more games. I would love to sort of to bring it back to like classical studies and stuff, right? I would love to see something along those lines where you're just like, I'm gonna run around like right, like I'm gonna run around Athens or Rome or wherever, um, and just sort of explore the built environment and the environment with the people. Whether you're like trying to destroy people's market stalls or rebuild the Colosseum is almost like incidental to the game. Um,
Yeah. Um, so I did want to point out we are now at Kakariko Village, and as you can see, it's completely different construction. We've got
Right.
these very much Japanese style. Like this is a very chic town. It's Japanese
Mm-hmm.
style wood and plaster and paper and straw, like the thatched roofs, the curving roof
Mm.
ornamentations.
The
Um,
lanterns
yeah, the lanterns, even
also
even the
feel
wooden
very
and bone
Japanese.
wind. They're not flutes, but clackers. Is all very very
Yeah.
Japanese and a completely different style than any of the ruins we've seen, any of the modern stuff we've seen, even the stables. Even though they have some of these same features, like they're wooden,
Right.
they have a curved roof, but they feel very Western. Not so in Kakariko.
And Kakariko. Yeah.
The other thing I was gonna say is, as David was bringing up, what constitutes violence in a game can be really different, and
Right.
he and I were thinking of the exact same example, which is Papers, Please. It's a very violent, intense story, but you neither commit nor witness any direct violence.
Right. I wish I could speak to that, but I'm a neophyte when it comes to games.
So Papers, Please is a game about you are a uh, essentially a customs office uh, officer in a
Uh-huh.
fascist state. And
Oh,
so you are like checking people's papers against their physical appearance and like scans, and you have to decide whether to turn people in, whether to turn people in because it gets you money to feed your family, or to let your family starve to let innocent people go. Like all of these very tense
right.
and difficult choices that are very soul wearing.
Right.
And there's definitely violence implied, but
Right.
you're not the one doing violence, and it's not being done directly to you. So like it's just really
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah. I would say it sounds really interesting. I don't quite think I want to play it. I don't
Yeah,
think I'm in the correct
yeah. I
sort of
I
mental space to do so right now, but
I watched somebody else play parts of it. I didn't have the stomach for it.
right,
I'm a little bit of a wimp when it comes to very emotionally fraught things like that.
right.
I want
Also,
I want to
oh,
be the
sorry.
hero, please.
Yeah. No, I
or
was
at
gonna
least
say,
or at least be in a situation where I can help people.
right. I was gonna say that I love that Grand Chicken Lord said that Untitled Goose Game is violent, but it's incredibly petty violence,
Yeah.
and I love that as a categorization.
Hmm.
Like, let me just ruin your Saturday kind of violence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
The kind of violence that my bulldog sometimes engages in. She's she's adorable and she loves everyone, but sometimes she's like, "Yeah, you guys like having kneecaps?" She would be a really good mobster.
aw, cute puppy.
Yeah,
Um
she's very cute, but also knows that she's got us
I've
all
never
wrapped
seen
around
this
her
animation
chubby
go
little
on long
paw.
enough for the peeking. That's so cute.
Right.
Um
Yeah.
this character is just incredibly adorable. Like I just
Mm.
want to give her head pats. It's okay.
Yeah.
Um and for those of you who read a lot of web comics and have encountered or a lot of fantasy and have encountered tropes like this is definitely a case of racial difference by hair color. If they have this white hair at all ages, they're Sheikah,
Right.
and everybody else who looks human but with elf ears is Hylian.
Right.
So like that's kind of hilarious.
Was that I feel like I'm trying to remember like in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I know like the Sheikah looked different somehow,
Yeah,
right? Right.
they're kind of elfin. They're like drawn out. At least in Skyward Sword. In Skyward Sword, the only Sheikah we really see is Impa, but she's very sort of elongated with that permanently white hair.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I haven't actually played through Skyward Sword. I own it, but grad school sort of got in the way of
It will do
of
that. Grad
grad
school
school
is
does.
like that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know. I'm like a little. This might be a little too real, but so I got my master of creative writing, master's of fine arts, and then right after that I went to my PhD, and then right after that I did a second master's in classics, which I just graduated from. So
Wow,
it was
you're one up on me. I've only done 2 higher ed degrees, and that was
I
too much for
don't
me.
I don't recommend doing all of them all at once. I mean, not all at once, but
Yeah.
consecutively. And I mean, I'm not gonna say the only reason I got my MA in classics is because of the pandemic, but it was a big decision because when I would have gone on the job market with my PhD, um, would have been like fall of 2020, and I just didn't couldn't stomach the idea of perpetually teaching on Zoom. So I was like, no, I'm gonna do more grad school. But now, and like I learned a lot, made wonderful friends and connections, and worked on a bunch of cool stuff. But I feel like ever since like what was it like May 17th when I graduated, I like that I'd thought of myself as a grad student for so long that I'm no longer a grad student, and all of a sudden, I mean, I'm applying to jobs and stuff, but like I'm like, oh crap, I now have like time to do things and play things and read things, and even though my supervisors were wonderful and taught me a bunch of stuff, I don't have to write things to send to them. Like I can just be like, oh, I'm gonna play this because I need time to unwind and like not feel guilty about it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I am of the opinion that grad school is abusive.
Oh, I mean,
Like
as an
just as an
institution,
institution, like there are definitely things worth getting it from it, but it is
right?
built to break you, and it's luck if it doesn't. You know, like so personally, I was ABD for my
Uh-huh.
classics PhD, and when the pandemic hit,
Oh, yeah.
but I just I was like I had done my prospectus, I had all the research, I like
Hmm.
was onto the writing part, and I just the institution was treating my fellows so badly that I could not work. Like I was
Right.
just emotionally broken knowing that like people on my committee were forcing my fellows to come and work on fall 2020
Right.
and
No, I.
like were
Hmm.
saying weird and very unhealthy things. But my
Right.
particular issues aside, like it's there's way too much. There's too much expectation. There are no jobs. Like everything is just a mess.
Right. And I mean,
Um,
I think Lexi in the chat, first of all, thanks for the encouragement. I knew I could count on you. But I actually I really did enjoy my experiences in grad school overall. But there's definitely like you know like the you need peer, and this is something that my one of my PhD chairs, because I had two chairs. One of my PhD chairs said, there's sometimes you just need like a snack and a nap,
Yeah, sometimes.
right? Sometimes you need a snack and a nap, and the poem you're writing about, or the whatever your subject is, um, has been there probably before you were born and will be there after you die. So go ahead and take that nap and feed yourself. Um, and then come back re-energized to your subject. So I think I mean I'm just sort of right now in like a state of transition, right? Because I finished my third like post grad degree since 2014. So it's just like a lot. I wouldn't want to do it all over again, but it's just like, okay, now what do I do? Um and part of that answer is, have time to be on like really cool events such as this. Um
Yeah, I will say I have done a lot more actual work in my area of expertise and expanding my knowledge and engaging with the public and education since I quit than I ever did during my degrees.
right, because you don't
Because
have
you don't have
time.
time.
You don't have time. You're like
You don't have time to
trying to,
think, let alone actually do
right,
anything.
let alone actually do anything. Like, I mean, this is totally getting away from the really cool art style here that we're seeing Ganon in, and away from Zelda. But the like when I was finishing up when I was writing my thesis this last time around at Columbia, it took me a while to sort of figure out what I wanted to write about. But since it was like a 2-year program, right? Like
You gotta pick. You just gotta move.
you had to pick and you had to do it, but in order to do that, you had to know what you were writing about. And I was like, still figuring out what I wanted to say about ancient Greek cult in 10,000 words or fewer. That it was really hard to say what I wanted to say in that amount of time, or in that space, because I wasn't, like you've done all this reading, you've done all this thinking, and then it's like, okay, tell us everything in what is essentially like a really long seminar paper. Um, Whereas I think that maybe, and they say, at least, I mean, I don't want to knock Columbia, because I think they're a really good program. But it was just the way I was thinking about it was like, oh, there's so many different things I could say.
Yeah.
That I was kind of like forced to pick one. And maybe that's a good thing, because otherwise I'd still be writing.
Yeah. And there's something that came up in the chat that I wanted to look at, which is,
Uh-huh.
Grand Chicken Lord just mentioned that, their undiagnosed ADHD has been a factor in how they work in academia, and I think that's true for a lot of us. So many of us are neurodivergent. ADHD, autism, OCD, SPS, like a number of things. And
Mhm.
because of how stigmatized that has been, um, we don't think about it. And so we use the hyper focus that is often a trait specifically of autism or ADHD to just bull our way through, you know? Well, like, I'm on a hyper focus on this thesis and I will emerge in a year underfed and having no social life and a doctor. And
Right.
and like that's unhealthy. That is taking
It
advantage of
is.
somebody's neurodiversity.
Right. At the same time, I mean, I don't want to be like, but my experience was different. But So I was writing my doctoral dissertation. I started writing it like a few months before COVID hit bad. And I think really that having no social life and having to sequester yourself was a boon to me because like I love having friends and I love, hanging out with my friends. But having my social life absolutely, decimated. And being like, okay, I guess now I just have to write about um 19th century women's
Mm-hmm.
education and their attitudes towards classics, and then these like snooty Victorian men's attitudes about like how women are diluting classics and like oh my god, like whatever. I mean, it's really
No,
interesting, but
like it's something I constantly have to deal with. Like anytime that I look into scholarship, um, especially German scholarship, which shock surprise, but also
right,
British stuff, from any time before 1960 really, and like
yeah,
it's like calling me out specifically, these Jews and women. I'm
right,
like, hey now,
right. No,
guy,
there's
you're dead and I'm still
um,
here.
right. No, I
So
mean, not
just real
to,
quickly to
yeah.
turn back to
Oh,
game, like I
sorry.
just want to like
Yes.
really point out how very Japanese this place is. And then she told us to go to Hateno, which is a place that survived the calamity because it was just far enough away. And I want you to see what Hateno looks like because it's so very not Japanese. It's so very
Right.
European.
Yeah, no, but I wanted to say just to touch on your point, Julie. There's my sort of like my intro for my dissertation, which I'm hoping to turn into a series of articles soon. Um,
Gambatte.
is this arigato? This French dude who goes to Vassar College in the like early 1900s. And he's just like wandering around the US and he's like, "Oh my god." Um like he goes to Vassar and he's like, "There's these women who are here and they're reading Greek for fun and they're wearing pastel colors. I must not be in America. This is an island of nymphs."
What? Oh, that's
Um
wild. That's very funny.
And
Um,
no, but like just this like idea, right? That like the Victorian idea that men are better at classics for reasons unknown.
reasons.
But then like you can almost see like the wheels turning in his head, where he's like, oh, if you enjoy your subject, like you'll be good at it. Whereas if you're forced to read Greek or Latin or whatever, like you'll do it because you have to. You won't do it because you enjoy it.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of the start of my research questions in a nutshell. But yay,
It's a
Hateno.
blood moon. Um, the blood moon rises over Hateno as we
Oh no.
get towards ending our stream for the day. But yeah, so this is a Hylian village that has been around for long enough that it survived the calamity. It's got brick and plaster construction, very squared off with tile roofing, wooden rafter construction, like silos. These are just
Mhm.
very, very European looking houses. So different from what you see, but at the same time, you can see that the sort of the construction here with the like the sideways staircases,
Yeah.
the cobbled roads. This is very similar in nature to what you find in the ruins in Central Hyrule.
Right.
So, I guess we're about to see a blood moon, so I'll let that play. But think about, like, I gotta go in a few minutes, so think about what else you might want to talk about. Any questions in chat that you want us to get to in the next few minutes?
Um, well, Grand Chicken Lord, you mentioned like how to teach people how to enjoy math. I personally do not enjoy math. Um, but when I was teaching at Missouri, I taught a lot of creative writing. And there were some students of mine who, when they walked into class, didn't think of themselves as creative writers, right? They didn't think of themselves as poets. And I had a semester in which to not, force them to be poets, um, or to enjoy writing poems, but to show them why I enjoyed writing poems and why I enjoy reading poems, etc. So it was really just like a way to reframe the subject and be like you don't have to. I happen to be a published poet, right? But you don't have to be one to see what you can get out of this. So I don't know what the version of like, can you be like a published mathematician? What?
Um, it's yes, you can.
Right,
But more than that, what I will say about teaching people to love math is I have a friend who works for this group based in New York called Beam, that is a public math extracurricular sort of thing that is aimed primarily at folks who are less privileged, don't have the money for private tutors and things. So it's very much aimed at general public, impoverished and marginalized communities, and their whole philosophy is that the way math is taught, the way math is presented, and the way most people conceive of math is in fact very math phobic. And that math can be
right.
fun. It can be puzzles. It can be exciting. It can be about architecture and building. It can be,
Mhm.
something that you can actually get your teeth into. And so like I think that really is true. Like if you enjoy your subject, if you know how to share that enjoyment, no matter what the subject is, it will
Right.
be more interesting to people.
I think it really helps. Um, no matter, like Julie said, no matter what your subject is. Um,
Okay. Well, I think on that sort of uplifting note, we are going to end stream for today. Thank you so much for coming on stream with me, Jordi. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and thanks to everybody in the chat. This has been really lively, and I've just really been enjoying the discourse that y'all are in on. You can come back same time next week. We will be doing Breath of the Wild streams every Friday through June, and then taking 1 week break, and then every Friday after that in July will be Tears of the Kingdom. And that I will be playing mostly
mhm.
blind, so this will be pretty
Ooh,
exciting. So please do
thanks
join
for
us, and thank you so much for participating. Thanks,
thanks
everybody.
for having me, Julie.